Thank you very much for coming. They won't tell you, but I've been torturing them. And they've been working day and night, and I've been working day and night. And the reason is that everybody wants to talk about innovation, and everybody wants to be innovative, but it's not easy, and it's not straightforward, and it doesn't always make money. Sometimes a failure is a good thing. But unfortunately, our accounting methods don't, capture that. So I think just to set up the stage, let me show you a couple of ideas. So quickly, I want to talk about we need to define innovation, and because there are certain prerequisites, and that's how we started. And then, unfortunately, most of the innovation is disruptive, and therefore what we are talking about is slightly different. We are talking about an inclusive innovation. Now, usually there are factors which support this concentric or exclusive innovation, and then we need to identify the factors which lead to inclusive innovation. And finally, let us all take this journey together. It is an adventurous journey. It doesn't go in straight steps. So, let's explore. So to begin with, when we started the course, I said, let's set what are the minimum pre-requirements before we call anything innovative. And so we agreed on 5 things. It has to be novel. That's not enough. And then it has to be value-adding, and that means it should have some utility. And then we added to that, it needs to be radical. And that means 10% improvements and 20% improvements. We're not going to call them incremental innovation, as many people do. We're going to call innovation when it is 10x, 1,000%. And then we went we added this thing called action-based. So we said innovation is not just talking, but doing something. And then finally the piece was that in order for it to sustain, I think it should be inspirational, somewhat inspirational. So most innovations have unintended impacts. And now this is very interesting because I think Monday morning we all recognize what innovations do, but while it's happening, I think a lot of different things happen. So, for example, telephone was invented for the deaf so that you could listen to the concerts when you are away. Facebook, as you may know, was intended to compare dates, and then it became a social media. And then nuclear energy was intended as energy, and we ended up using it as a bomb. So typically the moonshots are required for innovation. And now this is interesting. If you take a man to the moon, it doesn't mean that we'll also take the man out of the ghetto. So whereas we spend these big bucks and do big things, I think we should keep in mind the impact on everybody else. So usually innovations are differentiated goods, many bells and whistles, premium pricing, disrupted markets, inaccessible to the poor. Some factors which favor concentration of innovations, they are all R&D intensive. So the more R&D you do, more innovation you do. There are economies of scale. You need to invest in capital. Governments favor the big ones. And there are reputational benefits. So if something is successful, it is more likely to be more successful. And lower marginal costs and knowledge spillovers. Now, you're going to hear today's speakers talk a lot about this economic pyramid and how we need to cater to the bottom 20%. And challenges are something called poverty penalty on how to do innovation with people who don't have a lot of income. They could be illiterate, so you use icons, you use storytelling, They have to trade off essentials, clothing or food or transportation or health. So your goods and services need to be multi-purpose. And then, because they don't have much money, usually you do small packages. Innovate for poor, we actually had an amazing discussion that we should also work on how do we alleviate poverty. Not just cater to the poor, but how do we help poor get out of it. So we saw that there was some connection to freedoms, and there were some connections to capabilities, and then we came to this conclusion that we should co-create with the poor so that they build up their confidence. And now there is an OECD definition which basically says you should fairly share the dividends with everybody else, and we started questioning whether does it really depend on self-confidence and soul strength. So there's a lot of work done by Professor Prahalad from the University of Michigan, and they call it Holy Grail of innovation as the toughest thing to do in innovation, and yet I think a lot of people around the world are now paying attention. So what you're going to hear today is a number of real-life examples and experiences and discussion about the barriers to innovation for the many.